So let's talk pregnancy and working. Most pregnant people, if they were working before they got pregnant, continue to work during pregnancy, especially here in the United States. And that is perfectly okay if that works for your body and your budget and your lifestyle. But there are some important things that you want to make decisions on and ask yourself as your pregnancy goes on. And in this video, we're going to process some of those or even bring awareness to it. And so the first point I want to touch on is when to notify your employer. Legally, you do not have to ever notify your employer that you are pregnant. And if you plan to utilize an employee benefit such as FMLA, so Family Medical Leave, according to the Family Medical Leave Act, which you can find online, you need to give your employer at least a 30 days notice. Now, you want to make sure that you're familiar with the policies at your place of employment because they may add on an additional ask or request. But for the most part, you are covered under that guideline. And something else that you want to think about is what does maternity leave look like if you plan to process maternity leave and or paternity leave or parent leave. Some jobs are switching it to parent leave now. Most providers are going to suggest, work ceasing, stopping, or at least not being as strenuous as the load was in earlier stages of pregnancy around the last week or two before your estimated due date. Again, this varies from job to job, pregnancy to pregnancy. The real thing that you want to be able to ask yourself here is, does the requirements of my work responsibility impact the safety of myself or my baby? And if so, then you work with your provider and your employer to set yourself up for success. Workplace safety is something else that you need to be thinking about as a pregnant person. If your job requires you being on your feet for long hours of time or being in very, very cold or very, very hot settings, maybe you have possible exposure to different toxins and chemicals, or maybe your job requires heavy lifting. One job that comes to mind is high stress jobs like healthcare workers and teachers and people that work in daycares, exposure to children and like little people. All of these things could make you qualify for reasonable workplace accommodations. Again, there have been different legislations and policies that have come into place that protect pregnant people. One of them that you want to reference is the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. The Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978 protects you as a pregnant person. Okay, it says that you can't be fired, denied a promotion, demoted, or forced to stop working because you are pregnant or might become pregnant. You also can't be denied employment because you are pregnant. Now, there is still some discrimination that happens, even though that act has been in place since 1978. We've just recently had some updates in legislation, the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act, which adds to the rights afforded to pregnant persons. And so being abreast and aware of your rights as a pregnant person, as a nursing person, and even in the year following birth, so up until about a year postpartum, you are protected by various laws. And some states even go a step further to protect birthing people. But you want to make sure that your provider is notified of any workplace accommodations that you may need so you can advocate for those in writing. What are the travel requirements for your job? Typically, if you have a high travel job, and that requires like long car drives or maybe even long flights out of the country. Talking with your employer and your provider around, what responsibilities look like once you're nearing the end of your pregnancy. Most providers are going to want you to stop traveling around 36 weeks pregnant. Some airlines even have a limit as to the how late you can fly. Same with cruise lines. And so just making sure that you are taking into consideration the travel requirements of your employment. And then one of the most important factors that, I really encourage pregnant people and their support systems to think about is, what are the stress and emotional considerations that come with your job? Some questions that midwives work with their clients through are, when you leave work, do you have trouble sleeping, winding down at night? Are you able to be relaxed when you're not at work and throughout the other day? Are you able to get adequate exercise and nutrition throughout your work day? What are the levels of stress as it relates to your job? Chronic stress is one of the number one issues, or common problems for pregnant people who work. And this looks different in us all. It could look like insomnia or body aches for some of us. And it's not as easy as just changing your diet. Sometimes it is your workplace and the stress that comes along with the workplace. And you want to make sure that you are in care with the provider and supported by an employer that sees you, hears you, and responds accordingly. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please process this with your healthcare provider and your support system. But ultimately, know that small changes in your daily habits and routines can have long-lasting impacts on you and the development of your baby.